My name is Matt Miller, and I am 48 years old, and I was born, excuse the pronunciation, somewhere near Anyang Providence in Korea, according to the papers. And of course, the way that I think about my age now, it's more of a hypothetical construct because the exact birth date, I think we think is around May in 1974, but that's, as an adoptee, I think that's a little uncertain. 9 months old, I was flown to the Midwest to Chicago and was met for the first time my adoptive family. I'm the youngest of four, so there are six people in the family I grew up in. My adoptive parents had two biological children, and I don't know the exact years they were born, but I think my sister was 9 years older. I have a brother who's about 6 years older, and then my biological sister and I, we were actually adopted together, and we're a year and a half apart. I grew up in Elgin, Illinois, so it's I believe a northwest suburb of Chicago. You know, I think growing up in Elgin was interesting because I really, in many ways, and identity and how I thought of myself in the world was come from like a white perspective. So I think that was a really foundational experience and way that I saw myself and others in the world for many years. I knew I was adopted, so I knew that from as early as I can remember, like that was never a surprise to me. My parents, you know, especially back in the 70s, like I think my parents were very intentional and thoughtful. So I can recall, I don't know what age, but I can recall like my mom or my dad like sitting us and giving us books about where we came from. We celebrated the day that we arrived in September. That was like an anniversary for us. In Elgin, there wasn't a Korean restaurant. So, I mean, one kind of funny memory is that when we would celebrate, because there wasn't a Korean restaurant, we would oftentimes either have a prepared meal that my mom made, or we would go to Gilbert's Chop Suey, which was a really good Chinese restaurant that I loved. But my parents tried, and they also, we were adopted through Holt. And so Holt had these, I think, regional activities for adoptive families. So I remember like Easter, Christmas, and you know, these Holt gatherings where it's a bunch of people you don't know, but it's white adopted parents and their Korean children. So my parents tried to socialize, I think, the best that they could at the time. I mean, my parents are both white, European, so they didn't have any of that knowledge or shared information, but they tried. Growing up with my biological sister, I think, is a unique adoptee narrative and experience. So my sister was three, maybe three and a half, and she had memories of our birth mother. My sister really took care of me and looked out for me. So she acted like a little parent. You know, I think about like my 3-year-old sister taking care of me, and there's a story of like, you know, we were in an orphanage and we were malnourished, and we know that from our medical records that, you know, our health wasn't great. So I think we were hungry. One of the cherished memories is my sister, like, we're eating Cheerios and one dropped on the ground, and so she picked it up and she split it in half and she took a half for, you know, it's like that's the kind of narrative that my sister did. But that connection and strength was, I think, as a very young person, is one of the reasons why today I am as whole as I am. I wish I could say that from early on I embraced and pursued my Korean identity, but it wasn't until early 20s, I believe. When I was in school, I got very involved working at a Korean church in Naperville, Illinois. But this was a place where people welcomed me, and they treated me like family. They went above and beyond to be gracious and understanding and educate me and feed me. And it was healing. It was transformative. So that was the thing that in my early to mid 20s, without that, I don't know where I would be today. I certainly wouldn't be sitting here, because that allowed me to feel Korean. Around that time when I was in my graduate studies, I had met someone, Korean American scholar who studies adoption, and he, you know, I remember telling him, I just don't I don't know the language, I don't know the history, I don't know the culture. I want to, but it's so hard. Like I would tell people, it's easier to get another PhD than it is for me to learn Korean language. I'm not good at language, but language and history were things that I thought I needed to gain to be Korean. I remember at one point really struggling with that because every week I'm going to this Korean church, but I certainly am seeing people connecting and they're talking about their experiences as a Korean American. There's English, there's Korean language, there's connecting in ways that I can't, and I'm seeing that and I'm wanting that. So after these moments, I talked to my friend and he said, Matt, there is not one Korean experience. He's like, you were Korean. And I'll tell you, that was like a transformative, like I think that was in 2004 or 2005 that he said that. That is something that I hold on to every day because I can't be these things even if I want this. To hear somebody, I think, who I saw in that way, it was like freedom. I mean, the tears now, it's like I don't think it's sadness as much it is like it's just overcome. I mean, that was almost 20 years ago, and without that, I don't know how I would make sense of my life today. So I am married. I've been married for 22 years, and I have 3 kids. And so I have a 15-year-old, an almost 13-year-old, and a 6-year-old. I still remember, when our first child was born, there was something like profound about like, here is my son. I am his dad. He's gonna know like who his dad is. Like that to me was like, oh my, like I still, he's 15 now and now he could give a shit about his dad because he's playing Minecraft with his friends or whatever game they're playing. But I still like, I still, those moments of like holding for the first time each of my kids and knowing that like there's a part of me here that is meaningful in ways that like chosen family is meaningful too, but there's something about like this is us. In my family, I mean, my kids know that I'm adopted. My older kids understand what that means. My 6-year-old, I don't know that my 6-year-old fully grasps what being adopted means. From even now till when they were born, I'm like that. You are a part of me, and you're a part of mommy. You're Korean, you're American. We talk about mommy's ethnic heritage as well, but I tell them my kids are you're Korean. You're Korean American. My partner early on would get like language so that my 2 oldest would like try to do like numbers and things in Korean. We've tried. We have our own versions of Korean tradition. So like again, there is no one Korean experience. I do the best that I can with trying to pass on things that I know directly or indirectly. Each of them had a hanbok, and when they were the 1-year-old tried to steer them toward the $100 bill and the fountain pen, and they all did that because daddy was making sure they were closest. We do things now like we have versions of food that we make. We go to H Mart on a regular basis. They love my youngest calls it the brown noodles, but they love jjajangmyeon and japchae, and those are kind of the steps we take to try to socialize in the best way possible and being gracious with ourselves and how we do it. And it took me a long time to learn to be okay with who I saw in the mirror. I don't want my kids I want them to know there's a pride in being Korean, that being biracial, being mixed, that's also a beautiful thing, that they're not just one part of them is good, but they are, as a multiracial person, beautiful, that I love them, that people who don't love them can, excuse my language, can fuck off. I want them to be able to internalize the beauty and the anger externally, not the despair and anger internally. That's what I want for my kids or anybody who is struggling with that, because that's not your fault. That's not their fault. That's the structure. That's the world. That's systems of oppression. And unlearning that, it took me years as an adult, and I want my kids to grow up having the pride from the beginning. My name is Matt Miller, and this is my Korean American story.